Have you ever felt worthless? To the point where you don't know why you even bothered to deal with the problems life throws at you? Well, there might be a game made by Pillow Castle Games that can indeed help you overcome that feeling. The game is called Superliminal. Superliminal is a surreal puzzle game that was released back in 2019 that follows the story of a person that ends up getting trapped in a lucid dream after attending a sleep clinic. This game excels with its beautifully profound story, perplexing gameplay, and dynamic atmosphere. If this is your first time hearing about this game, I recommend you stop watching this video and play the game for yourself. Now, without further ado, we will be diving into the story of Superliminal. The game begins with a TV commercial asking the player if they have experienced feelings of self-doubt and worthlessness, constant minimization of huge dilemmas, or tendencies to blow small problems out of proportion. The commercial tells to look no further than Somnasculpt, a dream therapy clinic that uses new, groundbreaking technology that allows you to further resolve said problems through lucid dreaming. I mean, what could go wrong, right? The player is then introduced to the first level of the game with a drawing telling us how to move. As soon as they move, they're then met with a text-to-speech artificial intelligence introducing us to Somnasculpt, as we are asleep now, and in this room with a contract that definitely doesn't look suspicious at all. Well, never mind, I guess you just signed your rights away? No problem, I guess. You move along through a door that just appeared out of nowhere as you are introduced to the core mechanic of the game. Size alteration! The player can make things grow or shrink simply through altering their perception of the object. Perception is reality, after all. After several puzzles involving chess pieces, large buttons, nauseating hallways, optical illusions, and broken exit signs, you are then met with the exit, as you have reached the end of the session and the end of the Huh? That's weird. There's no exit. How would anyone... Well, there goes the wall, and... I guess you have to go in there? Well, that was a weird way of concluding a level. The player then wakes up from their dream as they are in a bedroom with an alarm with quite the peculiar time on it, and also a pretty cool painting of the sky. They walk out of the bedroom to realize they have probably rented out the cheapest motel ever. They then head out to the front lobby where they can buy a can of Dream Soda, which comes in a variety of different flavors. I can definitely say green is my favorite. The player then walks out of the motel to see... Huh? We're still asleep. I guess we are still in a dream? Anyway, the player then encounters a hallway, one that would elicit a strange feeling of familiarity, of being in that place before. This place also gives a warm vibe to the player, in contrast to the cold vibe of the previous level. An optical illusion and an incorrectly built door leads into our next objective. The player then walks through an illusory hallway to get to the first puzzle and an introduction to the second character of the game, Dr. Glenn Pierce. He ends up giving the player the much-needed explanation of telling them they're special because no one in Somnoscope knows where they went. However, they are currently working on finding their location and getting them out. They're thrown back into the warm place where they end up encountering the second mechanic of the game. Item creation! The ability to make objects real by putting together the pieces by looking at it from a certain perspective. Yes, I know it sounds complicated when I have to explain it with words, and yes, these explanations are going to be longer and more perplexing as I go explaining them. Please bear with me here. The player then proceeds to complete a multitude of puzzles involving the new mechanic and incorporating size alteration to item creation. The player is then told again by Dr. Glenn Pierce that they still don't know where the player is. Yet he also instructs the player to keep going forward like this whole thing isn't going sideways already. After another item creation puzzle, the player is told by Dr. Pierce that they still don't know where the player has gone to. However, the player can access a series of elevators that could trigger the subconscious to wake up the player that are guided by exit signs. Will this work without any malfunctions? Absolutely! The player then walks into a room that grants the ability to grab the fucking moon and size it down to discover an orange block, a slice of cheese, a can of Dream soda, a sized down exit, and another message from Dr. Pierce. Dr. Pierce instructs to not interact with anything psychologically significant to the player in the event that the elevator doesn't wake them up. For Somnoscope, they may not be able to control what happens. The player then sees the elevator and a whiteboard that has a bunch of random writings on it, but it also has, more notably, "Don't get lost" and 3 to 5 dreams per night. You might want to put a pin on these. The player enters the elevator to then wake up at the same motel 1 hour after they previously woke up. Something is definitely wrong here. The player walks out of the motel and into a dark hallway where the text-to-speech lady tells them that their current predicament is their fault and they have to correct this. It then tells them to induce an explosive mental overload to wake up. That doesn't sound deadly at all. The player proceeds onward to solving some more puzzles that involve the game trolling with the player with hidden cubes, sliced cubes, trapped cubes, warped cubes, illusory cubes, and breakable cubes. The whiteboard seems more nonsensical this time, with not many things to take note of. The player enters the elevator, and they wake up an hour later at the same motel. This time the player encounters another message from Dr. Pierce. He proceeds to tell the player that even though they explored the Waterfall Serenity Zone, they might still experience feelings of self-doubt and worthlessness. Why do I feel like everything is going wrong when the sun is still shining? The player ends up walking through a dark hallway, a hallway that ends up blacking out and being lit by a red exit sign. The player goes through a hallway sequence reminiscent of a horror game, and they get to a green building with several red stains that look a lot like blood. The player finds their path through the darkness and discovers something oddly funny. Murder, 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 murder. Beans. The player walks through some more darkness as the further they descend down this room, the more horrifying the setting gets as more red stains show up. Dr. Glenn Pierce ends up expanding upon what he said earlier about the player's feelings of self-doubt and worthlessness. How the cause of these feelings may originate from the desire of having the happy life they see everyone else having. The player encounters more bloodstains, an nearly placed chess piece, and more puzzles that play around with the light and darkness of each room. The text-to-speech lady further admonishes the player for failing to wake up. The player then goes through a maze while using a red exit sign to light the way. Some more bloodstains end up making the player feel even more uneasy until they end up finding a generator. Upon turning on the generator, they are handed the pleasant relief that they were running around in a restaurant that went into a blackout, and the bloodstains they found was nothing but red paint. The player sees some more incoherent whiteboards and walks into the elevator to wake up an hour later with 5 more alarm clocks. Is there an end to this dream, or are they stuck here forever? I guess there's only one way to find out. The player then goes through another incorrectly built door and heads into a room that has the chess piece and the cube screwed onto the floor as they place the door on the button to get to the next room. The player finds a hallway that introduces them to the third mechanic of the game: duplication! The ability to replicate objects by grabbing them. I guess that ability didn't take me that many words to try to explain. The player proceeds onward through various puzzles that test your understanding over this mechanic. Upon completing said puzzle, the text-to-speech lady tells you that Dr. Pierce is making incoherent messages in an attempt to counsel you, which leads into probably a second-best message.
Hello, name is my Pierce Dr. Glenn. To the Somnosculpt Welcome Experience, team of your care leader patient years 10 development. Conditions struggle you whatever with? Professional invention. Edge science with cutting, a tomorrow can bright. And buts, no ifs, or luck good.
Voice acting gold. The player then encounters a very understandable and concerning whiteboard, and they walk into the elevator to see they have woken up at a much more reasonable hour at the same motel. Is there any way to leave this place? This dream? The player heads out into a hidden room in the motel called Relaxation Room. The player walks into a room that shows a projection of the sky and a rather soothing melody. Anyway, the player encounters another message from Dr. Pierce. Dr. Pierce tells us that Somnosculpt was able to locate the player again and instructs them to keep doing what they were doing right now and stop doing what they were doing beforehand. The player walks out of the room and into the lobby and into the next level, where they end up falling into a rather large room. The following puzzles end up putting our skills in size alteration to the test. The player ends up encountering a TV. Too bad there's no signal on it. Dr. Pierce pops up again to tell the player that the dream should be more soothing and therapeutic now. Looking at this entire hallway, I could state the opposite. The player then knocks down a Jenga tower and rips out a window. Dr. Pierce then hands the player a very profound quote.
My name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to read you my favorite inspirational quote by me. The worst thing you can do is focus on negativity. It won't spare you from the cage of death, the pain of disease, the cruelty of time, the cold shell of human nature, or the eventual loss of everything you've ever held dear. Whatever you do, don't focus on that.
You might want to put a pin on this as well. The player then messes around with a bouncy castle and hears Dr. Pierce thank them for sending off all 832 emergency protocols and would activate the emergency exit protocol soon. Finally, some good news to hear. The player messes around with a few more doors and takes one of the longest walks to get to an elevator. Now that whiteboard looks very concerning. They walk into the elevator to finally activate the emergency exit protocol. Something's wrong. It should be 8 a.m., not 3 a.m. No matter. This is all a dream that they will soon get out of.
Emergency exit protocol initiated. Please prepare to conclude your Somnosculpt experience in 10, 9, 8. Error. Error logged by.
Orientation protocol.
Stand by for analysis.
Error analysis complete. You are exhibiting signs consistent with an increase in fear, hopelessness, and frustration. This is inconceivable, as somnasculpt therapy is proven to correlate with a decrease in these emotions. Hypothesis: patient was improperly oriented. Conclusion: impossible. Reformulating. Improved hypothesis: patient requires additional somnasculpt therapy. Conclusion: emergency exit protocol cannot proceed. Emergency exit protocol has been emergency destroyed. Instruction: continue with somnasculpt therapy indefinitely on an independent basis, as all orientation resources have been exhausted. This concludes your standard orientation protocol. Goodbye.
No. No, 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 no. No. This isn't happening. The same lobby, the same hotel, the same fucking dream. Maybe. If they're stuck. They can't be stuck. There has to be an exit. What the hell happened to the room? It's a dead end. There must be a way out. We can't be trapped here forever.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce. Thank you for completing the Somnasculpt Standard Orientation Protocol. Before you begin the first phase of therapy, I'd like to briefly describe the finite and fragile nature of the dream state.
None of this is making sense.
Of course, nothing is more challenging than the difficulty of changing perspective, of fundamentally altering your perceptions in a way that will enable you to face dire, trial-by-fire scenarios with solutions that could not be found otherwise.
That's our way out of here. I get it now. Changing our perception. The elevator! That sign! It has to be telling us the exit is the way it's pointing. Then we must look the other way. There we go. And in this room. Where did the light? There it is. That piece was fake.
Finally,
What if
while we
there's another
respect the
piece?
unique progress
Okay.
of every patient, you must understand that it is possible to completely exhaust your supply of dreams, thereby entering a state in which you will not be able to wake up, even with the help of triggering mechanisms.
Okay, there's the block, and where did we go? Where are we? Why are we teleporting? Perception is reality. We have to get out of here. Okay, just follow the arrows. Where?
Please listen carefully for the sound of an alarm clock, which will automatically play if you are approaching a destabilizing dream weight.
That alarm clock. There's the elevator. Where did it go? That's it. We're lost. We're never waking up or getting out of this fucking nightmare. What is this? This is the room. Please, let this end. Where are we?
This is highly unusual. It appears you have entered the Somnasculpt diagnostic
Is that
framework.
the clinic?
Patients do not have access to this dream. Diagnostic warning. Unrealistic use of dream objects may result in dream integrity fail states.
We'll do what we must to get out of here, even if it means breaking our minds.
Please paradox from creating any refrains. Explosive dream overload may result. Please paradox overload.
This is it. We're gonna die.
Please overload for dream explosion. Exclusion dream overcall frame.
Huh? What is this place? Is this the afterlife?
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and many years ago, I had a dream. I found myself in a place where I understood that each of us begins as nothing, where everything I perceived was shaped by seeing it exactly the way I wanted to. White space.
We're not dead. We're in this so-called white space. It's so beautiful.
But in white space, I also faced the greatest challenge I could imagine. Because with a lifetime of life itself behind me, and all of the weight that it carried, I realized that seeing things the way I wanted to was not as easy as it used to be.
See you on the other side. As we proceed onward with this place, we encounter Dr. Pierce again.
You're well beyond dreaming now, and further out than anyone has ever come back from. But we hope that you won't get discouraged. After all, if this is a place of pure perspective, isn't it also a place where a different point of view could make anything possible? Isn't that why you came here?
We can only go forward now, as we slowly approach the end. A.M. We are still in the motel at 8 a.m.
My name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and by now you may have realised that all of this has happened exactly the way it was supposed to. You see, everyone who comes to the Institute does so because they feel that they are no longer in control of something important to them. But more often than not, the problem is not that the problems we face can't be solved. The problem is that we become so afraid of failure that we refuse to see our problems from a new perspective. And so, we do the same things again and again and again. And therein, of course, we find exactly the failure we were looking for. Your life will always be a struggle, and you will always have problems. But today, you have the chance to see things differently. Even though it meant facing obstacles that seemed impossible at first, you thought outside the box, and you overcame them. Because you saw things from every angle, you understood them for what they really were. Because you kept moving forward, no matter how far off the path you were told you were headed, or how unexpected it became, you found your way. Minutes, you'll be back in the real world, and some part of you will say that none of this was real, so how could it have really meant anything? But, just like the power of perspective itself, it will have been as real as you believed it to be. All you've got to do is wait up.
What the game was trying to tell us was told to us from the very beginning. Perception is reality. The moment we change our perspective to a problem, we can overcome said problem. And this game was proof of that. Now that we have gone through the game's story, I would like to wrap up the review with my thoughts around the game. Superliminal's story manages to perfectly immerse the player into the game by actively refusing to give the player an identity, such as how every single character refers to the player as you or the patient, the game forcing you in a first-person perspective, and the ending having Dr. Pierce talk to you as the player and does not refer to you as anything else. As a result, the player is left feeling like they are trapped in a dream, only to then get out of the dream through the alteration of your perception and thinking outside of the box, and upon finishing, you end up learning something through a beautifully profound ending. Superliminal also does a wonderful job with gameplay, as the player is put through numerous situations and puzzles that forces the player to think outside the box. It tricks the player into thinking they know everything about the game, leaving a wonderfully perplexing experience for the player when they play the game for the first time. A good example of this is during the cube level, where each cube is affected differently than the previous time you interacted with one of them. As a result, a first time playing of this specific level would constantly keep the player on their toes over what the cube they're going to touch is going to do. This level perfectly encapsulates Superliminal's gameplay, being a perplexing yet thrilling experience for first time players. Superliminal also manages to provide a brilliantly crafted atmosphere that bounces back and forth between cold and warm. To elaborate, the second level of Superliminal constantly bounces back and forth of said feelings of cold and warmth through the warm colors of the hotel and the cold colors of the warehouse. This level is a key example of Superliminal's clever use of its atmosphere. Furthermore, the jazz music adds a peculiar feeling of tranquility through piano melodies that do not abandon the soundtrack even when it should. A good example of this is in Labyrinth, where the song that is playing, Dark Light Escape, has a piano playing as the leading melody that never seems to leave, even when things get intense with that level. This use of both piano and jazz manages to invoke a sense of tranquility to the player even when everything is going horribly wrong. Additionally, the level designs manage to make every single level unique to one another and invoke feelings of familiarity to the player. The same feeling of familiarity the player would experience if they look at a liminal space for long enough. A good example of each level being unique to each other is in Labyrinth, where the entire level is littered with callbacks to previous levels and how said callbacks are used to further induce said feelings of familiarity. Moreover, the lack of physical characters further enhance the player feeling alone, as well as induce feelings of desperation and dread at various points of the game. The best example that displays this is in how every single level ends with the false hope of being granted an escape from the dream you are trapped in, only for the player to wake up and come to the realization they are still trapped in their dream. Furthermore, the same feelings can be felt during the entirety of Blackout until you finish the level for the first time. This puts in full display Superliminal's ability to use the atmosphere to invoke different feelings to the player. The only things I didn't like about the game was the fact that the two other mechanics we encounter in the game aren't really used after their respective levels have ended, and how the game has no replay value. It could have implemented the duplication mechanic to further deceive us, or use the item creation mechanic to make players look around their surroundings a lot more. However, the moment the player beats the game for the first time, a good amount of the experience playing the game is gone, especially when the game relies on surprising the player with the game's perplexing nature as a key part of the gameplay. This results in replays of the game losing its appeal rather quickly, and some of the levels losing their charm once you figure out every puzzle. This is really something they could definitely work on if they were to make a sequel or additional installment to this game. This is precisely why I recommended the viewer to check out the game before watching this video any further. In conclusion, Superliminal is a game that has the most beautifully perplexing gameplay and one of the most profound endings I have ever seen in a video game. I would absolutely recommend people to play this game, and I would give this game a solid 9 out of 10. Thank you all for watching this video, and if you want to watch more videos like this, please subscribe. I would also appreciate to hear what you think about my video or Superliminal in the comments. I hope you all have a nice day, and I will see you in the next video. See ya!